Hey everyone, it's Wooden Railway Edward, and boy, do I have something special to share with you today. You can hear the excitement in my voice, and trust me, once you see what we'll be taking a look at, you will be excited too. From the thumbnail you clicked on, it's a little bit unorthodox what we'll be taking a look at today, but as they say in the entertainment business, show don't tell. So here I'll bring in this miscellaneous bag of Thomas & Friends merchandise goodies. You can see here some track from different merchandise ranges, perhaps a Trackmaster Destination, and also way down there the shell of a Trackmaster Stanley. I'll turn the package over here, and you can see here is a price tag, and that price tag says $49.99, so rounded up about $50. A heavyweight flannel package is what this is in. Of course, this is not the original packaging of what came in here. Imagine if you went into Raymore and Flanagan and you just saw this on the shelf. Trust me, that store would have been in a lot better financial shape if they sold stuff like this. However, jokes aside, this is a pretty great package. It's a little steep for $50, but there is good reason for that. If I move this baby package over, you can see that the big package that I'm bringing in right now is very heavy and very big. It doesn't even fit on the full width and length of the screen here. And if you can push this down, you can see it says full, which I think is pretty ironic considering this is just some random package that they used, but it has all this great Thomas & Friends stuff inside of it. This experience, when I bought these items, was sort of a white whale experience that I've been yearning for a very long time. I've talked about this in many other unboxing videos that I've done on this channel, that I love going out into the wild, so to speak, and trying to find secondhand stores, thrift stores, and flea markets that sell Thomas & Friends items. And as the years march on, it is getting harder and harder to come across these items that are for sale for reasonable prices, and most of all, are in good condition. The classic era of Thomas & Friends merchandise, I would consider it from the 2000s to about the early 2010s. When Mattel took over, that is when things started to go downhill. You can think about the Thomas Wooden Railway line, that turned into Thomas Wood. Trackmaster turned into Trackmaster Revolution and became more wacky with their set designs and also engine concepts. And also Take Along got those ugly big magnets and then turned into Adventures, which turned into Push Along, which at this point I don't even know what any of the range's official names are. All that aside, back to my point, it's just a really great feeling to go out into a store, whether it be a thrift store where I got these ones, a flea market, maybe a garage sale or a rummage sale, and find stuff like this, even if the price is a little steep. The only reason I say that is because for $50, I'm not sure if this is all quality and in good enough condition to warrant that $100. However, just the feeling, as I mentioned before, of going into the store and seeing these on shelves was well worth that price that I paid. And it's a very funny story. I was in a car, and legitimately, I could have taken the left path or the right path. If I turned left, that would have taken me to the thrift store, and if I turned right, I would have gone on to do other errands that I had to do that day. And just on a whim, I thought, I haven't been to the thrift store in about a month. Let's just go there and see if they have anything new. And I kid you not, when I walked into that thrift store, I was hit by the sight of a completely rearranged store. They had changed all the shelves, the locations of all the different departments, but right in front of the door was this huge shelf that had some antiques on it. In front of that shelf were these two packages, and I was beside myself with joy. I could not get over how great of an experience this was, as I've had actual dreams of finding stuff like this at garage sales, or my cousins or something like that donating me their Thomas & Friends stuff. And it's just something I've always really wanted, and now I finally have that memory of finding this stuff in that thrift store. I've had subpar luck with finding Thomas & Friends merchandise out in physical brick and mortar locations. You know that I've gone to the flea markets. I have a whole series on that. But I've also gone to garage sales, not really so much success there. I've gone to flea markets. I've gone to different retailers like TJ Maxx, Marshalls, or Home Goods. Those have all been duds. And of course, the only place really left is antique shops and thrift stores. Now, thrift stores, I've had some success. It is very hit or miss. Some days you can get great stuff like this lot that I got, but then other times, honestly, it's just kind of garbage that they're selling, and it's not really worth the trip there. I've gotten a couple good things, some home media finds, and also I think one time I got a take-along surprised face Gordon, which I'll throw up on the screen right here, but for the most part, not so great of a time at those thrift stores. So that is why it is so amazing that the one time I decided on a whim, I was able to find this great stuff. So enough rambling aside, I think we'll take a look at these. Maybe we'll do the small package first and build our way up, as I haven't really looked through these all that much. Usually, I'll let you in on a little secret. When I'm doing an unboxing video or something of the like, I'll appraise and look at the items before I unbox them, air quotes, for the camera, just so I have an idea of what I want to talk about. However, for this time, I have no idea. I have not opened these bags at all, so this will be as much of a surprise for you as it is for me. And who knows, maybe in the middle here where we can't see anything, there will be some white-faced troublesome truck or something like that. So let's get into this and take a look at this first package. I will move this bigger package off screen so we can get a better look at this smaller one. You can see the zipper here along this package is broken. I am not sure if that was the way it has always been or just when I've been lugging it around from the store to the car to my house, if it got like that. Regardless, you can see it's about halfway open there, and I think that might be a lost cause. So the first thing that is screaming our name is this big orange tunnel. And just an FYI before we get into the meat of this video, and I'll pause here because this is something I really have to say. I am not even an expert of Thomas Wooden Railway, the primary merchandise range that I collect, and by proxy, I am not by any means an expert for Trackmaster, Take Along, Take and Play, or any of the other ranges we might come across in this video. That's just a fair warning, just to let you know that things might get a little bit dicey when I try to explain what we're taking a look at, or I confuse different things. So expect some disclaimers and some write-ups on the screen of this video in post-production when I work on editing it and researching on the computer. With all that said, let's dive back into this orange tunnel. I am very certain that this is Trackmaster, as it has that track design of sort of the later era of Trackmaster, before Mattel took it over. And honestly, I know people like the blue Tomy track, but that's probably my favorite era of Trackmaster. I have the most stuff from that era, even though I have a pretty small Trackmaster motorized collection. And if we take this tunnel out of here, this is probably the heaviest thing in this package. This package is actually pretty light. The one to my right, that big, humongous bag, is very, very heavy. But back to this item, you can see I pressed down on this dynamite, and the tunnel opened like that. That is a pretty cool effect. And the stuff with this Trackmaster is that, unlike Thomas Wooden Railway, where it was more about creating stories and the vibe of the brand, Trackmaster is more about the gimmick, the play feature. And that sort of started to creep in to different merchandise ranges like Thomas Wooden Railway from time to time. However, it wasn't the main point. However, for Trackmaster, even dating back, I'd say, probably to the later years of the Blue Track Tomy, it really started to be about the gimmick. What can we make this destination, this engine, this track piece do to keep the kid engaged? Not to get on my high horse here, but I'm not necessarily that in favor of a toy such as that. I prefer a more detailed model, air quotes, like Thomas Wooden Railway. However, there is nothing to disparage Trackmaster. I think it's a perfectly fine range. And like I said, I have very little experience with it or even knowledge of its history, model type, etc. Back to this model though, you can see on the side right here, it says mine, closed, keep out, and that is a sticker decal that is carved out in this plastic mold right here. That is a very nice touch to this item. If we turn it to the front where it opens up like that, it says caution, and it is a boarded up part of the mine where the engine obviously would come out. That is also a nice detail, and I also like how they picked out a different color of plastic for this door section. You can see the rest of the tunnel is this bright orange color, but this one is a nice green with some wood detailing picked out in the plastic. That is something I feel like maybe Mattel wouldn't do nowadays if they released a set like this. On the side, back to what I was saying, you can see here's now a rock texture, and that is a distinct color from the orange. So a lot of care and detail put into this model. Wow, back there is a lot of screws on that door. I don't even really know what that's for. I guess if we open this up, that is the green insert. I guess it's screwed into there. That seems like an unnecessary amount of screws, however. Regardless, I think this tunnel... Oh, the door went open. This tunnel is a very nice item. As I mentioned, you press down on this dynamite lever and whew, the tunnel explodes like that. I don't have a Trackmaster engine on hand. I'm hoping in this unboxing we'll actually take a look at one. But there is a groove inside the track that if the Trackmaster engine rolls over that, I wonder if that activates the tunnel. I'm not exactly sure. On the bottom here, let's see, what does it say? It says 2011 Mattel. So I stand corrected. Mattel actually did make this item. 2011 Ghislaine, which is of course the new name for the Britt Allcroft company, made in China, but it does say Mattel. So I'm wondering the timeline of all of this. Like I said, not an expert by any means. Anyone who's more versed in Trackmaster can let me know in the comments. But I assume maybe that Mattel took over Trackmaster a little sooner than, for example, Thomas Wooden Railway. The last detail I'll mention is that there's sort of these leaves on the top. You can see that design pattern of all the leaves. Not necessarily sure what that exactly is meant to depict or represent, but we'll leave it at that. A nice item to start off with. If we go back to this grab bag, so to speak, of these items, we'll pull out these two pieces of Trackmaster track. These are the pieces that I was talking about that I think are actually pretty cool. And they're this design of this grayish brown track. And the reason why I particularly like this design, it's just the detail. You can see the ballast along the edges of the track here, and by the railway ties right here where the planks, you can see there's also ballast detailing. If I flip to the back of this track, let's see, what does it say? This one says 2010 Ghislaine Mattel, and this track says 2009, so that's a little bit interesting. I don't know if these are from the same era or same set, but I mean, they're compatible, which is expected, but you never know. Think back to when they did Thomas Wood and Thomas Wooden Railway. Imagine how confused a parent would have been when they went to the store for a birthday and then they come back for Christmas and the whole track system is radically different. Enough on my soapbox, though. Let's take a look at some other stuff in this bag. I'm seeing a Thomas Wooden Railway item, so that's getting me excited. As you know, I'm a Thomas Wooden Railway fanatic. I'm not exactly sure what this piece is. You can see a lever right here, and then this black object that has this flipping thing. And I suppose when an engine rolls over this, something is supposed to happen. This is a brownish color in the same design as this track. You can connect it like this, and that makes a nice, maybe a quarter of a loop. We'll get there, though. There's a lot of track in this bag. This says 2012, so these years are all over the place. I guess I underestimated when Mattel took over Trackmaster. Not sure exactly what this is, but maybe we'll figure it out as we go along. Maybe this is a set that I'm not aware of, that if we find all the pieces in here, that's what it will be. Here is another track. This is labeled 2010. And we'll take a look at something different here. Here is a support for a track. I'm not sure if this is actually Thomas & Friends brand. Let's see if we can see on the bottom. To be quite frank, I'm not seeing a date on this support riser. Let's see if the track can actually fit into it. I mean, I guess. I don't know necessarily if that's supposed to be like that, and I might be breaking the toy a little bit here. So I'm not really sure if the track is actually meant to go along with this support, what did I call it? A support girder or a riser. That's the correct word. I don't know why I forgot that word. But I don't think it really fits. So questionable on this, on if this is Thomas & Friends. Here is a roof or maybe the back of a container or something. Once again, not sure if this is Thomas & Friends. It says 410 there. Not sure exactly what that means. We'll put it off to the side. Here is something that I am sure is Thomas Wooden Railway. It looks like a station, or excuse me, I shouldn't say Thomas Wooden Railway, Thomas & Friends. Sorry, I'm just so accustomed to only using Wooden Railway. But I was going to say it looks like a station platform, perhaps. And if we focus the camera here so we can get a better look at it, on the bottom, this says 2010 Mattel. Hopefully there will be a station or a building of some sort to put in this little gap so we can have a proper station platform. But for my use in my Wooden Railway videos, as a goods platform or something like that, this actually works pretty well and looks pretty nice. Here is another support riser. Let's see if the track fits this time. Maybe I had it upside down before. Maybe it's, I don't really know. A straight piece of track might work better, but I don't want to break these toys, so I'll leave it at that. Here's another one of those small ones. This one is labeled F for what that's worth. Once again, I can't really see any date on here. And then I'm going to leave that Thomas B for a little bit. We'll take a look at him last. Here is a buzz saw that is pretty fun to play with. You can see it's sort of like a flywheel that might be on Fergus, for example, or the back of the logging locos in Thomas Wooden Railway is what this kind of reminds me of. On the bottom here, it doesn't say a date. I wonder maybe if this goes along. Oh, do you know what this might go along with? I'm just sort of trying to play around with things here, like, honestly, a kid might do. I don't want to break these toys, as I said. I don't think that goes together. So we'll leave that buzzsaw as it is for right now. And now we move on to this, which is the shell of Stanley, which is ironic. I think back to Enterprising Engine 93's new episode, Shell on Wheels. This is legitimately a shell. It's only missing the wheel portion of that statement. Here is Stanley. And for a second there, I thought actually that this Stanley was off-brand. You can see there's this sticker here that I've never seen in a Trackmaster item. But I suppose this is actually a real Stanley. It says 2008 Ghislaine, which makes sense because 2008 is the year that The Great Discovery, the Thomas movie before season 12, was released. And here is Stanley's face. I think that is a good Stanley face. One thing about Stanley is his peculiar face shape. It's not in a shape that we really see on many engines, but I do like his silver smoke box there along with his funnel. I think that actually looks very smart, along with the springs he has right here along his side tanks. He has a nice metallic nameplate that has some red in the middle, and you can see the shine of that. He has his coal bunker back here, and just general detailing of his whistle. And overall, I think Trackmaster, for all the grief I give it, is actually a very detailed and very nice range of toys for Thomas and Friends. More accurate to the proportions of Stanley than the Thomas Wooden Railway. No shade to Thomas Wooden Railway, but accuracy has never been its strongest suit. Here is some more Trackmaster track. Just quickly look at the dates of this. Let's see. 2009, and this one says 2011, so a mismatch of years here. Let's see. Here is 2010 and 2009. More track. It's always great to get more of this track. Maybe I can have an actual mini layout now. And here is some different types of track. Here is this track, and I am not sure if this is Thomas and Friends related. Let's see what it says. Made in China, if you can see on the bottom right there. So I am not positive if this is Thomas and Friends. I'm leaning towards no. I don't remember any gauge of wheel that would fit along this track, and I don't remember ever seeing this before. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. However, I have seen this before, which is the Lego Duplo track, which was most popular, in my opinion, in the small range of Duplo trains that they had deemed a Thomas Wooden Railway around this same time. So I actually believe this is from that range. Me personally, I have an express coach, some odds and ends like a Signal. I have Spencer and Gordon in that range of toys. And that, ironically, I actually bought at a garage sale many, many years ago. Or should I say I didn't buy it, but my parents bought it for me when I was very little. And that's why I have some of the Trackmaster stuff I have from that garage sale. But these are always great to have, as I think I only can complete one loop, but now I can make a bigger track size. And there is more of it in here. Here are two more pieces of that track. And let's see, what else? You can see here's another straight piece of that mystery track. We'll get to that mystery in a second. Here is a pile just of stuff. I'm going to push that to the side a little bit. Sorry, Stanley, for knocking you over with that track. Here is some more of that Duplo track. And like I said, just a really wide assortment of different things. More of that mystery straight track. Another piece of that Duplo track. Oh, and here's something a little bit new. Here is a small curved piece of track. And also some switches. Here is one switch that has the female ends. And here's one that has the male ends. So that is pretty nice. Let's see, that also says made in China. I'm pretty sure that's not Thomas and Friends, as I've really never seen that before. Once again, correct me if I'm wrong, and we'll just take a look at the last little bits of things. Here is another piece of track, and a compass, which doesn't look like it will be very useful. There's no magnet or anything in it. It's just a made in China compass that is made entirely of plastic. But I'll carry this in my pocket if I've ever lost in the woods. Maybe that will help me out. But there is some non-Thomas stuff in here. I can see here is a cute little polar bear, it looks like, that is a squishy little polar bear. So that's actually pretty cute, and I'm not actually too mad about that. Maybe it was a pencil topper or something like that, like a decorative part to put on the eraser of a pencil. Regardless, that's a little nice addition. And in the bottom of this bag, here is, oh, I missed this little track. This little track piece that is similar to, I believe it's the 2-inch track in Thomas Wooden Railway. Don't quote me on that, though. And to end it off here is some awesome Thomas Wooden Railway track, which I am always ecstatic to get more of, as I'm always looking to get more Thomas Wooden Railway track. Here it says Toys R Us. Oh, that's nice. So Toys R Us track, I believe that the brand of wooden railway at Toys R Us is Imaginarium. And Imaginarium, I don't know if it's sold anymore now that Toys R Us is out of business, but I believe that's the connection. So I think Imaginarium track would be this Toys R Us track. It says made in China, so maybe that's where this track came from. Who knows, though. On this track, this is just sort of nondescript. It might be part of this. It might just be some off-brand. But you can never use too many of these curves, or rather, should I say, have too many of them, especially straight track. I love getting straight track, especially this longer piece, longer than the 6-inch straight track. So now, the magnum opus of this bag, the small bag at least, here is Thomas. And once again, I am so happy that I found this here. Even if I paid, let's say that big bag was worth $40, this stuff was worth $10, I think this Thomas makes up for it. Just finding it at that thrift store after years of really coming up empty-handed. So this Thomas, the wheels are dated 2002, and that can also be found from the lack of stripes on his boiler and also the lack of the indent or negative space in his funnel. He has that redesigned face that Learning Curve did in the early 2000s. His eyebrows are a little bit smudged, and his magnet is pretty cloudy. However, besides that, he actually doesn't have that much edge wear. And this Thomas is unique for me because I've never had a Thomas that is from this 2002 era. I have a 2003 Thomas, and I have a 2002 James, but no 2002 Thomas. So it's great to get a different variant. If I got another 2003 Thomas, that would be alright, I guess. But to get this Thomas, I didn't even see him in this bag, is a great surprise. It looks like there's some hair in his wheels, so I'll have to clean this guy out a little bit later. But with all that said, I think he looks really great, and as I said, not too much edge wear on his model. So a great addition to my collection. And I think that's it for this bag. You can see here's the empty bag. I think I'll probably just throw this thing out. There's not much use anymore with the zipper being so broken. Not anything else except that little... what is that actually? I guess we'll take a look at it while we're here. It looks like it's just... It's a little bit gross. It's like a headband or something, maybe for a doll, like bat wings. But with all that said, I think the biggest part is this Thomas. Of course, this track and also some of those destinations that I found also in this unboxing. But this isn't even the biggest part. I'd say the other bag is 3 times the size of this small one. So let's keep this thing chugging along and move on to that big bag. The bag is labeled full, so let's hope that's an indicator of all the great Thomas stuff that is inside of here. Due to the sheer size of this humongous, ginormous bag of what is hopefully many Thomas & Friends goodies, I have moved it off to the side so we have the middle here to appraise and lay out the many numerous items we'll be taking a look at. So now I'll unzipper it. You can hear the sound of the zipper. And this bag was originally maybe a bedding case or a sheet bag, something of the like. That's just the vibes I'm getting from it. Here's the first item. It is this smart red bridge. It reminds me of the Sodor Bay Bridge. Of course, that was blue. But once again, it has that peculiar mystery track. If I bring the one from off screen that we just took a look at, it connects. But once again, I am not positive that it is Thomas & Friends branded. The plastic is somewhat stressed. There is white starting to show up on the plastic. If I do a head-on view, just how bowed the plastic is, there's a better look at it. But for what it's worth, I think that is actually a pretty nice bridge for being made completely of plastic. There is no date on it. It only says made in China. It is a little bit dusty here in the corners and crevices, but a nice item nonetheless. I just wish that it was Thomas & Friends, which of course I hope for all these items. The next thing is, it looks like a waterfall, which is pretty interesting. I am not sure what this is from. You can see that it has these white lines going down the side that are meant to symbolize the rushes of water or the foam in the water, the movement of the water. And then it is pooling at the bottom right here. I mean, I don't know if there was ever a Thomas & Friends Niagara Falls set, maybe part of Big World, Big Adventures when he traveled to the United States. But if I remember correctly, he only went to the desert and San Francisco. So I'm not sure about that one, if that is Thomas & Friends branded. So far, we're 0 for 2 right now. Hopefully, we'll get to some Thomas & Friends stuff soon. And next, well, it's not looking good, as here is another one of those risers. Not sure if this is related to... Oh, well, I guess I could test this out, and you have to be smarter than the toy wooden railway, Edward, because I believe that these actually go together. You can see, well, maybe I'm not smarter than the toy, as these are not the same thing. Oh, okay, instead of pushing them down, you slide them in. Who would have guessed? And sometimes fans complain about how simple the toys are made, but as you can see me struggling with this Thomas and Friends toy, or should I say train toy, maybe there's a reason they designed these so simply. But that makes sense that this track riser is part of this track. They're connected. So maybe that's an indication that there's an entire set of this stuff inside of this big bag. Next, we move on to something else, which also says made in China. And this is a little platform here where it looks like there's this little area maybe where you drop off cargo and this big red lever that activates some kind of play feature on the bottom of the track here. And once again, this is connected. So this must be some kind of set or something. Hopefully an engine comes out of this that we can see what this was originally meant to be. However, next up, it looks like this might be Thomas and Friends. Let's see. I can't see anything on the bottom of that, but I could have sworn that this was Thomas and Friends. I did actually see this in the package when I saw it at the thrift store, but I guess not. You can see this is kind of similar. I'm thinking back to the Thomas Wooden Railway Destination that is sort of similar to this one, that it is this dumping of this lava, or, well, not lava, you know what I mean, like molten substance that is in a steelworks or something like that. I think this was paired along with maybe diesel, if I'm remembering correctly, or just something like that. It was a Mattel destination, but that is giving me those vibes. However, it is nice. You can see I'm pulling this giant red lever, which is making it going up and down. It has some nice detailing along the side. The sticker, a hazard stripe, lines the top. Then it has these support systems and some detailing of machinery behind these pillars. That is present on all four sides, something that Mattel has lacked to do in a while. Hint, hint, Mattel. But there's some nice rivet detailing on the plastic, and overall, this is a nice item, even if it is not Thomas Wooden Railway. And the trend continues here. Here's another all-plastic item. And maybe I made a mistake. I'm getting a little nervous, actually, that I have not found one Thomas and Friends branded thing in here. That is unfortunate. If I paid $50, I want to get actual Thomas and Friends stuff. But if this video is posted to YouTube, then you know that things turned out okay in the end. So if it doesn't, well, then it might be the end of the line. But it's a horrible cranking noise as this crane lowers. And you can see it is a magnet right here. Let's bring in that Thomas and see if he connects to the magnet. I guess it's... Okay, so that's kind of a funny visual. It looks like the crane is transporting Thomas, and then you could imagine the lava falls on him, and then Thomas succumbs to his injuries. So that's a little bit morbid, but nothing like some morbid undertones in a Wooden Railway Edward video. And you can see that as I crank it, the line of the crane lowers, and that is pretty cool. It's similar to some Thomas Wooden Railway cranes or anything like that. And overall, this is a nice item for what it's worth. Once again, some black, or I don't know why I said black, red detailing on the side of the sticker with some support beams and cross sections, which make up the industrial feel of this item. Some rivet detailing, and then this yellow part of the crane where the cab is has a window, a ladder, and some pipe and machinery detailing with a hazard stripe. Overall, a nice item, although it is entirely plastic and once again made in China. I'm really starting to worry here. I have not seen a single Thomas and Friends item, which is a real bummer, if I'm being honest. Here is this hill, which looks like an engine probably wouldn't run along this. Maybe a character like Birdie, but for the sake of fun, let's test Thomas going down. I guess this is just going to be the crash test dummy Thomas now in my collection. And let's see, he'll roll down the... Okay, that was pretty fun. This could entertain a kid for about 10 minutes probably, just doing that. I mean, not for me, honest, I'd be entertained by this for hours, honestly. Let's see what happens when he goes backwards. And let's see what happens when he goes upside down. That was my favorite. And I guess we'll be bold here and go the sideway. I mean, you could make a movie out of that, honestly. That was pretty interesting. Jokes aside, let's move on to other stuff. You can see here's another type of mystery track. This one is an ascending track. So once again, giving credence to my theory that this is all part of some type of set, all this different track. Here's another support, one of the smaller ones. And as I dig in the bag, I'm really trying to find stuff here. Here's something interesting that is different from the other stuff. It looks like a little controller here, maybe for a train or maybe a car, an RC car or something. I'm not necessarily sure. On the side here, it says made in China. I'm assuming, honestly, that this is related to this and the rest of the track of the set because it sort of has the same plastic color. But on the side, it has a backward, forward, really fast forward, and stop button on the side. So that's nice. It has a compartment where you can put batteries. It feels pretty light, so I don't think there's batteries inside of here. But it also looks pretty new. So maybe that will be something we can test at the end of the video. Of course, I'm still trying to look for Thomas & Friends stuff inside of this bag. Here is another riser. And let me just move the camera really quick to show you what's inside this bag. So if I go inside of here, you can see that there is some Thomas stuff that I'm trying to avoid, specifically just so we can have sort of a build-up. But also there's a lot of this stuff, like this isn't Thomas & Friends. And there's some of this more track, and I'm not even sure what that is. That's just kind of random train track. So it's a little disappointing, the lack of Thomas & Friends stuff so far. But hopefully we'll get better at that, maybe as we go further inside the bag. Back to this, here is that black track we were talking about. It is very flimsy. It kind of reminds me, one time Wendy's did a promotion where they had tracks similar to this. It was yellow, but it had the same kind of concept and the same track coupling design. That's sort of what that reminds me of. Random, I know, but that's the connection that my brain made. And here's another piece of ascending track. If I dig inside the bag more, you can see here is something blue. For a second I thought maybe this was Tomy Trackmaster, but it is definitely not. It has no labeling or anything on it. It looks like maybe the section to a bridge, this sort of ascending part of the bridge support. And also here's another Lego Duplo track, which is always great to have. Let's keep going inside of this big bag. Here is something miscellaneous. I'm not sure what that is. And oh, here's something interesting. Here is a boulder. So this is not the boulder from Rusty and the Boulder. Rather, this is an indiscriminate blank boulder that was fabricated in China. So, I mean, what's the world come to? Even our rocks are coming from China, someone would say, probably. But nonetheless, this is, I mean, what are you going to say about it? It's a boulder. And for the sake of fun, let's say that this boulder was connected to this ramp right here. So now we have Thomas on the ramp, or at the bottom of the ramp, and then the boulder. And then Thomas is just absolutely obliterated by the boulder, and then he once again succumbs to his injuries. I don't know what it is today, but I just want to injure this Thomas as much as I can. I'm having a lot of fun with him. Here's another straight piece of mystery track. And it is getting bleak here as I'm just trying to find stuff that is interesting. Here is, oh, okay, here's something interesting. Here is, well, actually first we'll just take a look at this. This is another track riser. Here is what looks like an adventures. This is really interesting. So this looks like originally a Matchbox, but then you can see it has the adventure-like coupling. So I'm not sure what this is. Well, do you know what? This is actually very interesting, and this is a real-world connection that I never made before. So the makers of Hot Wheels cars is obviously Mattel. You can see here's the coupling system. But this is the same coupling system that was used in Adventures. If I bring in my one and only Adventures item, this LBSC Green Thomas, you can see that it is the same coupling system. So this Thomas, ironically, can couple to this Hot Wheels car, And that is just really interesting. I never knew that, and I don't know really if anyone else realized that Mattel had this coupling system before and just transitioned it to its Adventures items. Of course, Adventures as a line only stuck around for about maybe less than a year before they moved on to Push Along, I believe. But regardless, that's pretty interesting and something I really never knew. So if we couple it this way, you can see it looks like Thomas is pulling this peculiar-looking rapid transit bus, or maybe this is a coach. And maybe it goes on... Okay, I don't think so. I was going to say, oh, maybe it fits on this track, but I don't think that's actually connected. Regardless, if we try to couple Thomas, I can't do it with one hand here. There we go. Now, Thomas has a little thing that he can pull around. This Thomas is now very jealous. He has no rolling stock of his own. But now we can send this Thomas down the hill, and that's pretty fun. Oh, okay, he crashed. Come on, Thomas, you can do it. I mean, just great content that I'm making right now. Anyway, that's interesting, an interesting connection. I just had to bring in that LBSC Thomas because I thought that was so interesting that I just had an epiphany there. Anyway, here's what I thought was really interesting when we were looking at it, that this is a 4-way switch, which is awesome. It's this sort of crossover track. This is also part of that new Trackmaster track. It is labeled 2010. This is something that is extremely useful. I think back to the barrel loader set. I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but it comes with Stepney and Scarlelli, if I'm not mistaken. It's a Thomas Wooden Railway set, but it utilizes this piece, and it makes a pretty interesting track layout of two sort of loops of ovals intersecting with each other. With that being said, we move on to these two, which are two small curved pieces of track from that Mystery Track brand. And here we have something really big. Here is a crossing for that Duplo track. So now if I set it on the ground right here, I'll move the camera out a little bit so we have some more space. You can see that's sort of how that works. If I bring in another piece of track, now let's pretend this is the Duplo Thomas. He can run along right here, and then if this is stopped at the crossing, look at my ingenuity of making just stuff up right now. But regardless, here is Thomas going down, and then the bus crosses, but then another train comes, and then you can recreate one of those accident videos in that train crash compilation on YouTube. So that is interesting, and I'm actually very happy about this. I did not see this in the packaging originally. Next up, we have these palm trees, which are really nice. They don't even have the Made in China labeling, so this is really random. Here we have more Ascending Track from that Mystery Track brand. Getting a little sick of saying that every single time. But here is something very different. And let me just rearrange the camera. So here is what looks like a wooden railway destination. And if you look on the bottom, that is correct. It says Toys R Us, so this is another possibly Imaginarium or maybe just Toys R Us branded item. Here is a big red lever that if you move it side to side, this red part of the wood comes up. So I'm assuming what happens here is that you set a package here and then it will slide down once you move this red lever up. We'll test that out in a minute, but just to look at the details, here on the front is a ladder. On the sides, there are 3 windows, and then some details of this covered window up here, another ladder detailing, and some barrels with a shovel. On the back, here's a door with another stair detailing, and on the side, another 3 windows. What looks almost like a stoplight and a blue door. Honestly, very nice detailing. And if I put this in the background of a Thomas video, I don't think anyone would know this is off-brand, so that actually might be something I do. If you notice in my remakes, I really like to put random buildings, such as the Engine Wash, or Mr. Jolly's Chocolate Factory, or similar Thomas Wooden Railway destinations, in the backgrounds of videos, like remakes, like Thomas's Day Off, just to add some life to my sets, to make it look more lived in and industrial and rugged. That's just a technique I like to use, but enough said on that. Let's try out this little play feature. So I have a little bit of a predicament here. You can see here's a really big package that doesn't really fit the confines of this destination. But then the small package kind of gets stuck on that spinny part. Maybe you really have to, like, do it a lot. I don't know. But regardless, I think the play feature works all right, and I get what they were trying to do with that. So that is nice. I'll move these packages off screen, and let's go back inside the bag. Here is something quite interesting. I don't even know if I want to talk about this at this point, but this is really cool. This looks like almost a metal engine, and it is cold to the touch, so I believe some parts are metal. And I'm not sure exactly what this is. I apologize. My phone actually ran out of storage, so I had to swap out my SD card. But back into the swing of things, what I was taking a look at before my phone went kaput is this awesome wind-up engine. For a second, I thought that maybe this was compatible with this track right here, but as you can see, the gauge is just not right. Even though it's not compatible with the mystery track, this is still a very impressive model. It says Made in China, Playmaker Toys on the bottom. I'm not sure exactly who that company is, but props to them for making a very detailed steam engine. There's the cow catcher on the front, along with the very thin buffers, almost too thin for their own good. There's no face on the smoke box, but the boiler is very detailed with these red stripes. You can see the dome and also some whistles. There's a gap between the chassis and the boiler, which is always very realistic and nice, sort of like how Edward has. And here's the wheel arch and the wheel configuration. There's these two big wheels, the driving wheels in the back with the side rods. And here in the front, here are the two wheels on either side of the pony truck that sort of adds support to the engine. On the back, here is some cab detailing, which is very impressive that they have detailing like that in an engine such as this. The wind-up feature doesn't really work. You can see it gets stuck on the carpet hairs of the carpet, which is an unfortunate thing, but it is funny to see how crazy the side rods go when you let it go. The only other detail I'll mention is these side rods. It is not present on this side, sadly. I guess it broke off. But on this side, they are present, so that is very nice. Or rather, should I say, not side rods, handrail detailing. I apologize. I was looking at the side rods when I said that. I meant the handrails on the boiler, which is always a nice inclusion and makes this model, honestly, feel pretty premium. Moving on, here is more track. This time we have another curve, but also a switch track, which is actually the first time ever I've gotten a switch track like this in this Trackmaster track design. So that is awesome to finally get that. I can expand the scope of what my layouts actually look like. Here is another Trackmaster destination, finally. I mean, it's been a very long time since we've taken a look at one of these things. Here is another orange thing, ironically. So the two Trackmaster destinations have both been orange, surprisingly enough. It is a coal hopper. There is a big load of coal at the top here, and then it looks like you pull up a truck, and there's an arrow here where it says an engine can go through, and it looks like if the engine presses down on this, maybe something would be activated with that coal, some type of play feature. Speaking of engine, look at what's next. Here is our first Trackmaster engine. It is a Thomas, and this looks like a newer version of Thomas, not necessarily this era that this destination is paired with. But here's a Trackmaster Thomas. I have a couple of these, but this is my first one of this style specifically. I love how the buffers are painted on, that black detailing, and also a pretty good Thomas face. A little bit creepy, but nothing too bad. On the side, the classic detailing that all these Trackmaster engines have, and this is back when the proportions were still fairly realistic. I mean, what they've gotten to now is just so ridiculous. Of course, now it's all engines go. But before that, the proportions just got so wonky, and it was unfortunately pretty embarrassing to look at these engines with just how unrealistic they'd become. He has some coal detailing in his bunker, and an on-off switch, which unfortunately means that he is not powered right now. There is some tape along his boiler, which, let's see if we can get that off. Oh, it just crumbled, as the tape is probably pretty old. I mean, I can work on that later, I guess. But on the bottom, something interesting. I didn't know they put the names right here. I wonder if this is a new addition for these Mattel engines specifically, that it says Thomas here, perpendicular to his design of the chassis right here. Kind of similar to how they now do the names on the new Thomas Wooden Railway range of items. It says 2009 Ghislaine. Of course, we know they stopped updating the dates at some point. But one aspect I also like about these items is that if you put him into the off position, he's able to freewheel, so you can play with him on the carpet. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Trackmaster Revolution items did away with that feature, which is honestly pretty stupid to do that, as that adds a lot of play value to this item, to be able to just push him around when you don't necessarily want him to be motorized. Of course, now he's not motorized for me, but I can still enjoy his model, just pushing him along the carpet, a hardwood floor, whatever surface it may be. With that said, what a great Thomas to have, and not to jinx anything, but this lot is starting to get pretty good. I can see a lot of Thomas and Friends stuff, which is very good for me, as I spent the $50 on this and I want to get my money's worth. Here's another straight piece of Trackmaster track and another switch, which is always very nice to have. Let's see, what else? It looks like here is a tree, and I am not sure if this is a Trackmaster tree. I'm leaning towards no, and I have a sneaking suspicion that it might be related to this mystery track set. And this tree, it has some nice detailing of the leaves right here. It is a pine tree, and you can see it has the roots, or should I say the trunk of the tree, and it kind of goes out so that it can stand on a platform like that. And it has this rubbery material for the leaves or branches of the tree. So that's nice. A little late for Christmas, a couple months late, but it kind of looks like a Christmas tree, so that's nice. And I think, as you can see, that all of this massive stuff is starting to encroach on my space right here. So why don't we do a little cleanup and start with a clean slate for the rest of this bag? Honestly, I don't even know if we're halfway through yet. And I did a little bit of cleanup, as I mentioned. And we'll start right off with something weird looking. It looks like it might be connected to this waterfall right here. And it is sort of this blue plastic. And as you can see, it looks like if an engine, let's just say for argument's sake, Thomas comes along and he splashes through the water. That actually is kind of a cool feature. It kind of reminds me of a car wash or something like that. You know, the Sodor engine wash from Thomas Wooden Railway, how you sort of crank it and he goes through these brushes. That's sort of what that reminds me of. That's honestly a pretty cool play feature. That's kind of satisfying. But once again, it's a mystery brand. Oh, that's actually cool. So I'm kind of into seeing all the inner workings of stuff. You can see the springs right here that make this thing work. So that's cool that it's see-through, so you can kind of see that. If it was more opaque, you probably wouldn't be able to. But, as I said, that's pretty cool. And I guess we'll keep Thomas in there. It's always nice to have him around. And speaking of Thomas, you can see it looks like maybe one of his buddies right there, his clones, is at the bottom of the bag. So that's enticing to see. Here's another one of those risers, the plastic risers. I feel like we have a million of those now. But we might be onto something here, as here is what seemingly is a type of truck or car, depending on if you're in the US or UK. I guess I covered my bases there. Now let's see if this fits in with this track. And I think that might be a fit. I don't want to jinx things here, but this might be what this track is paired with. This is just a pretty simple and cheap cargo car. It has this yellow top where it has some wood plank detailing. It looks like it's a 5 plank truck. And it has just one diagonal girder along the side, or wooden plank, I guess I should say. Some detailing on the chassis, some cheap plastic wheels, and these weird couplings that kind of flap around. You can see, let's see if they're metal. I assume they were. So it kind of couples to Thomas. Not the biggest fan of this. This kind of looks cheap and nasty, so we'll leave that off to the side. and take a look at something else. Oh, here's something awesome. Here's a Y switch, which I didn't even know they made in Trackmaster, and frankly, I didn't really ever think they made this in any merchandise range. This is pretty unique. So if you take one of these track pieces and then another like this, you can see that's starting to actually look pretty cool. So then, oh, well, if I could snap it in, geez, that took a while. So if I take Thomas right here, and let's just try to get it in frame a little bit more. I apologize that it's off frame. And let's see, Thomas can go along here. And then if he's chuffing along, do you know what? I just am on a roll today because this is a great allegory for my decision, actually, a reflection of when I decided, should I go to the thrift store or should I go do my boring errands? And I decided, oh, let's go to the thrift store, and I made the right choice going left. And I switched the track, and that's me going to the promised land, which is this Thomas. I think I'm actually being very creative right now. If any company like Universal or Disney or something like that is watching, sign me up to write your movies, because I'm just cranking out these awesome thematic concepts right now. Any English teacher would be absolutely astonished with my level of capability right now. Joking aside, this unboxing is going a little off the rails here. I think I'm getting bored by all this stupid plastic track that we keep unboxing. Here's more of it. Here's another straight piece and some risers. I mean, how much of this is there? This is like a 100-piece set of this stuff. Here's more of it. Yada, yada. Here's another little pine tree. That's always nice to see. That's pretty cute. And here, we actually moved to something pretty interesting, is a station. Here's a station building. Now, let's see. I have a hunch that this might connect to the thing we looked at previously. Don't mind me digging around a little bit as I try to look for it. So here's a platform, and my guess is that that fits in, and I guess I am right. You can see here is a little station, and let's see, what station do you think this is? I have Tidmouth Station, the yellow one, and it has the little lower Tidmouth sign, but I am not sure what one this is. I'm leaning towards either Maithwaite or maybe Wellsworth Station. Do not quote me on that, I'm not really sure. But I think maybe Maithwaite, because I think it's sort of a reddish-brown color. Regardless, a very nice building. If we have, once again, let's take out some track here. Here's some track, and we put Thomas along here. Let's pretend he's pulling a coach or something. That looks pretty good. So, awesome that I finally completed this building. Weird that it was separated across the two bags, but nice to have a mostly complete destination with the exception of that sign, I assume, that goes there. So, moving on, more track. By this point, I think I can make a pretty big layout with all this track that I'm getting. Here is another switch. This time it's going to the right. And here's just this random plastic part that says made in China. Looks like another riser or support or something like that. I mean, we'll probably figure that out eventually here. And let's see, what is this? So, we might have come to our conclusion here, and I'm actually kind of happy maybe that we figured this out. So here you can see is sort of this diesel-looking locomotive, and it looks like these are from the same range. And if I move this 2 along, you can see that that looks like that's the mystery track. So I think we figured out our puzzle here. It goes along with this Toys R Us branded locomotive. So this is a pretty simple diesel. It has some weird numbers on the side. I really don't know what that all means. It's kind of getting faded out by the camera, but you can see it says 7.3 and then 73D 998/5/11/506. Absolutely zero idea what that means. If that's like a credit card PIN number or something, I have no idea. The buffers are not picked out in any type of color, so they kind of blend in. But I do like this head-on view. That's a nice detail of the windows being painted on the cab. And overall, just a pretty generic diesel, not probably based on anything. The middle wheel right here is kind of similar to this Thomas, where it is just sort of a dummy wheel that is just there for decoration. And of course, the driving wheel really is this one. But it also looks like this one has some tire tread, so maybe these are both driving wheels. It is not operational, as I don't think there is batteries in it. Although, let's see if we can get into this thing. Although it looks like it's screwed up actually pretty well with those. Well, I was going to say it had the triangular heads for the screws, but it looks like actually it's just the normal screw that any screwdriver could work on. So maybe I'll get into that later in the video, but for right now, let's keep this thing chugging along. Although I am happy that I figured out the mystery of what exactly ran on those seemingly numerous amount of rails. Here is something interesting. It looks like a station or a signal box or something like that. So if we go to the bottom, it has no oh, I lied. It does have information. So, yeah, don't listen to my first impression of anything, because I'm usually wrong. I have to actually put this in the light, because I really cannot see what this says. Okay, so you definitely can't see it, but it says 2010 Ghislaine way up in the top of this on the inside. So this is awesome. I can use this for my Thomas Wooden Railway videos, and no one would be any the wiser if I use this. It looks like maybe stairs were attached to this at some point with these two random holes in the side of it, but that's awesome to get. More of this black track, if you remember way long ago when we were taking a look at that and we found one of those pieces. And I'm just grabbing here. Here's more of this stupid track. I mean, how much does this train really need? That's ridiculous how much track is in there. Here's another curved track for Trackmaster. And let's see here. It looks like here is a package, and I'm assuming that if this package goes in this cargo car / truck, so that's cool. Here is another one of those Hot Wheel cars that has those adventurous type couplings. Let's see, where's the other one that I put? I think it's buried in the pile over there of stuff that I have. But here's the Adventurous Thomas, so we can see it's kind of the same concept. I've never been too into Hot Wheels. I'm more of a Matchbox guy, personally. I think they're just kind of dumb to have random, like, race car designs like this that are just not realistic. I prefer more realistic car designs, but that's just my opinion. Here's another Trackmaster destination. I mean, we're flying along now. There's so much left that we just need to get through some of this. So here's a Trackmaster destination. It looks like if an engine goes along the line, that somehow they'll trigger something to do with this destination. I'm not exactly sure what. I mean, it looks like, oh, maybe that's the point of it. Let's see. So if we have this going along, I don't know what this lever on the back does. So you can see it has a lever and it sort of pushes up. I don't really know what that does. It says 2012 Mattel on the bottom of it. So that is nice. And it has sort of this Sodor oil design logo that a couple items have of this oil pump with the crown on the top of it. I'm not really sure if that's taken from something. I mean, I think back to, this is a random example, but Lego, when they did Royal Mail, they had the Royal Mail logo on the Lego set. So I don't know if that's like actually supposed to represent something or just a random logo. But anyway, this is a pretty nice item to have this oil. I mean, I guess the point of it, you can see it kind of compresses down. But again, I really don't know like what the point of that is. I mean, it makes it, that's an obnoxious sound as someone who doesn't like weird noises. Anyway, it's another one of these adventures / Hot Wheels contraptions, this random red car. I mean, this just looks ridiculous. Like, I don't even know if I'll keep this. I might just put this back in the bin because I really have no use for this. Let's see. So next up, we have a piece of wooden ascending track, which is always nice to get. It looks like this one is made completely of wood. I have a lot of them that have sort of the plastic part for this knob right here on the male end of the track. But it's nice to get a wooden one, so that will kind of blend in. And it's never bad to get more ascending track. I mean, if you want to have any type of cool layout, have levels. I mean, I love to build up 1, 2, 3 levels up in the air. And ascending track is essential to that pursuit. Here's more of that stupid plastic track. That's just the name I'm giving it now, the stupid plastic track. And let's see, what else is in here? Let's see. Here's plastic track, so that's cool. And then here we have another piece. I think this is 4-inch straight track that's off-brand. Let's see. Okay, that one doesn't have Toys R Us on it. And here is traction rail track, and this one is a curved 6-inch piece of track. And honestly, I don't think I have traction rail track in this design, believe it or not. I don't think I have it in the 6-inch design. I have the smaller 4-inch one, but not the 6-inch curved track. So that's awesome to get. And let's see, what else is in here? We have this, I don't even know. I mean, what even is this? I'm not even going to talk about this because I don't even know what this is. Just some random plastic thing. Here's more curved Trackmaster track. It looks like it has some stains on there, which is kind of gross. I'll have to clean that out. I might have all of these take a deep bath to kind of get the dirt and grime out of these things. Here's more stupid plastic track. And here's another piece of ascending stupid plastic track. Here's a curved piece of Trackmaster. And I apologize that we're just going back and forth here with all these random things. But I'm just trying to get through all this sort of random stuff so we can get to the real good Thomas Wooden Railway stuff that I see in this package. Here is another plastic thingy that I'll have to figure out what that actually is. Another random plastic thing. Once again, I'll have to figure out what that is. And oh my goodness, another piece of ascending plastic track. I mean, that must be like 6 now that we've taken a look at. And I really don't know what the point of that is, but it must be a huge layout. Here's more curved plastic track. And here's something interesting. Here is seemingly a matchbox, but it is a train. So if we look on the bottom right there, I was just talking about how I like matchbox cars. And let's see if the camera will focus here as I knock into some of the stuff behind me. I'm getting surrounded now by all this Thomas stuff. So here you can see if the camera will focus. Let's see, maybe the black on black. Okay, well, it looks like it did it then. This is a matchbox, and let me read the fine print here. It says 040 Steam Loco, made in England, 1978. So that is actually awesome. I wasn't suspecting that, but this is a really cool find to have something like this. I'm very into history and collecting old things. Recently I've collected old trading cards made by Ripley's Believe It or Not. I've collected presidential election pins from the 1950s. I'm really into collecting old memorabilia and antiques and stuff like that. And this definitely serves that purpose to put on a shelf of all the old stuff, cool stuff I have. And that is an awesome find. I'm going to put this to the side so it doesn't get mixed up in this sort of whatever plastic nonsense that is. I mean, this is when toys were really made great. You can see, as it said, it's an 040. It has 4345 on the side. And it has a coal bunker with coupling detailing and buffers. And overall, even though it's just red and black, that's a very nice item. So I'm actually very happy with that. I did not suspect that was going to be in this at all. I didn't see it. But I'm pleasantly surprised. More dumb track right here. I mean, it's seemingly never ending. I feel like every time I think I've cleared all of it out, just more and more of it just come out of this bag. Here's more of it. Oh my goodness. I'm just going to stop acknowledging it at this point because it's just ridiculous the amount of stuff that was in there that's just this plastic track. Here is a directional sign, which is pretty nice. And here's just a random plastic part. And once again, it looks like just all of this is encroaching on our space. Here is what looks like almost a garbage can bottom. And I wonder if we take a look at something we had previously. Okay, I'm just trying to fit this lid that we took a look at, which I thought maybe was like a garbage can thing, onto this and see if it actually works. So not train related by any means, but it looks like this is sort of like a garbage can or something of the sort. So I'm just trying to get it so it fits on this bottom part of the garbage can. So there you can see right there. If anyone wants to let me know in the comments if they want this, I mean, I have zero use for this. But it's sort of a little garbage can feature, which is kind of nice. It reminds me of the incinerator from Toy Story 3 for what that's worth. I don't know why that came to my head. But that's sort of what it reminds me of. Here what looks like sort of the cab or the front half of a truck. and it looks like it's sort of an Imaginarium truck or something of the like, so that's nice. Here is another tree, and while we're at it, I'll just grab the other one that I saw. 2 more of these plastic trees, which are nice. I mean, I don't know if I'll use them in my series, but I mean, they still are pretty nicely designed. Oh my gosh, I just saw an Erdl item, which is really surprising. I didn't think I'd see that. I mean, there's just a lot of crazy stuff in here that I'll pause for a second, and I don't know if this was just one lot of stuff that someone brought in, or they just found a lot of train stuff and they just decided to put it all together. I didn't have the foresight to ask the nice guy who was checking me out at the register, but maybe I should go back and just ask their procedure for that kind of thing, because it is interesting to see the mixing of stuff in here to see if it was all one person's collection or an amalgamation of different donations they've had over the last couple weeks. I apologize once again. Today it seems like my camera is just not wanting to work with me. My phone has just been on the fritz. Now something was wrong with my SD card. And I'll pan over here. You can see there's some awesome stuff we can still take a look at. But here you can see the pile has expanded a little bit. And that is because I started talking about items such as this one. But then my camera started to get weird and my SD card was recording the footage like really wonky. It had a weird pitch to the audio, so I have no idea what's going on. So I just decided we'll leave it at that. All this stupid gray track is basically all I took a look at. So let's clear all this out and start with a new clean slate and end with all this awesome stuff we still have to take a look at. So now that everything is sorted out camera-wise, and I've also cleared out the filming space here to give us more room, we can move on to the final leg of this video, which I personally think will be the most interesting. It's really weird that my camera malfunctioned like that. When I look over the clips that I was filming, it just looked very janky and my audio was messed up for some reason. I'm not really sure why that happened, but nonetheless, at least it wasn't the very interesting part of the video. As you can see, we've been building up, and honestly, it's happened pretty organically, as it seems like all of the Thomas and Friends stuff has actually settled to the bottom of this bag. So far we've taken a look at a couple cool things. We've taken a look at a lot of that dumb, stupid track that we'll probably try to put together at the end of the video. But Thomas Wooden Railway wise, we have seen this Thomas right here, which is a 2002 Thomas, in addition to a couple pieces of track. I'll put those back here. And we've also seen some Trackmaster stuff, which is all very interesting. However, without further ado, let's keep going through this bag. So first, I tried my best to get rid of all the track, but here, once again, we still have some of this track. This one is one of those curved Trackmaster pieces, and more of that gray Toys R Us track. Honestly, I just can't believe how big that set seemingly is. I mean, I swear, we've taken a look at hundreds of pieces of that track. Here's a small 2-inch piece of Trackmaster track, in addition to another one of those trees, which actually doesn't look half bad, so I'm not too displeased about getting another one of those. Once again, more of this plastic track, and also, this kind of reminds me, in some Thomas Wooden Railway sets, there is a bin like this. Off the top of my head, I can think of an orange one, I believe, that came in one of those sets, but this obviously isn't Thomas Wooden Railway. I believe it comes with this set that this track comes from. However, I just made that connection in my head, and my guess is that you'd put a piece of cargo in here, and it would be up against some rails, so a little drop-off station for the engine. That's just my best guess. We'll keep looking through here, and wouldn't you guess, more of this gray plastic track. I'll have to count this up at the end of the video and see just how much of this really was in this huge bag. Here is some more of that black track that I saw in the previous part of the video. I believe that by this point we have 3 of these now, so almost a full loop. Here is part of a riser for that plastic track back there, in addition to some more curved pieces of plastic track. I did my best cleaning this out, but as I dig my hand through this bag, I'm just seeing more and more of this plastic track. Here is another piece of Trackmaster track. I'm actually really happy to get this version of track specifically, as I think it's my favorite out of the Blue Tomy track, this type, and the Trackmaster Revolution sort of darkish gray track. So I actually am very happy about that. Here is another one of the cargo cars / trucks for this type of plastic track. So now that makes 3 of these that we have along with that diesel engine. And like I said, this isn't half bad. It just is pretty cheap, as you can see. It has this plank design. I believe we said that was 5 planks with the diagonal beam across here. And it has those dangling couplings, which are weird. Nonetheless, let's keep moving on. Here is another sign that must go with this plastic track, is my best guess. This is a speed limit 65 sign. Who knows if that is in kilometers or miles. Oh, it is nice that it is double-sided, so the other side in sort of a yellowish green says speed zone. It looks like it might clip into the track somewhere, as you can see this clip right here. Not totally sure about that, but we'll tinker with that when we get to it. And I think we're almost done with all the track. As we can see, here is what looks like a log. So if the camera would focus, it is in the shape of that cargo package we saw earlier. But again, my best guess is that it goes with this set right here, and maybe even has something to do with this tree. So that's all well and good. And if we move on here, we can see here is another part of the track riser, and here's also another log. And you saw him peeking out through there. Let's just take a look at this guy. It is a Thomas & Friends item. Finally, it is Luke, the narrow gauge engine. And Luke was introduced in the Thomas & Friends movie Blue Mountain Mystery, which surprisingly was written by Sharon Miller, but wasn't a half-bad movie. And it was the last movie of the CGI Miller era of Nitrogen Studios before Arc Productions and Mattel took over the Thomas & Friends TV series in 2013. So this Luke is from, I believe at this point it was called the Take and Play range. Luckily, he still has those small magnets, although they are pretty faded and clouded over, which I haven't really seen with these type of take-along, take-and-play items. Mostly it has occurred with Thomas Wooden Railway, but that's interesting to see. And something about take-along is that I really just don't have that many of these models. Off the top of my head, I have Ferdinand, which is pretty interesting. I have an Ugly Magnet Charlie. I have a couple Thomases, a Surprise Face Gordon without a tender, and also a Coal Dust or Dirt-Covered Percy, which is probably the most interesting one in my collection. However, now I think Luke actually takes the cake on that one, as he is a very nice-looking model. I love his proportions. It is leagues above anything that Thomas Wooden Railway can do proportion and scale-wise. And as I said, I just love how small he is. You can see he has 4 wheels, and the wheels are close together, so it just makes him look even more like a narrow gauge engine. I've seen a couple channels who do series or remakes, and they actually use these take-along, take-and-play engines as the narrow gauge engines along with Wooden Railway, which actually doesn't scale out that bad, and that actually might be something that I consider. Of course, I need to get the other 8 or 9 or 10 narrow gauge engines to actually make that work. I should mention that I don't have Luke in Wooden Railway, so this is the first Luke merchandise that I've ever gotten. And character-wise, I think Luke is actually a pretty good character. We didn't see too much of him outside of Blue Mountain Mystery, a couple episodes he was featured in. And if I'm being honest, I haven't seen that movie in maybe 5 years now. So this might be an omen to give it a rewatch. On the bottom, it says Luke horizontally, and it says 2012 Ghislaine Mattel. So Mattel had taken over the range at this point. You have the space inside his cab. There's no detail inside there, but it is nice that that is not just a black hole. It is actually physical space. On the bottom, they even have details of the metal grating of his footplate and inside his cab. On the back, he has 2 windows and buffer detailing, which is picked out. That's awesome. and a headlamp, which sadly isn't painted. On the side, he is number 22. He has some nice detailing back here where his square boiler is, and then some stuff back here, his side tanks, and he has the Luke nameplate on the side. And his face, once again, as Mattel often does, is a very good CGI face. I think it captures Luke very well as he was depicted in the movie and later appearances in the television series. And overall, I'm very happy with this Luke. And honestly, this is the reason why I got this package or bag of Thomas and Friends merchandise and other stuff, obviously, too. But I saw a lot of this Thomas and Friends stuff, which really intrigued me. And as I mentioned before, I've always wanted to find this stuff out in the wild, so to speak. So it's great to get this Luke, and that's only the first engine in a series of great stuff we're going to be taking a look at in the final leg of this video. Here is a handful of 6-inch curved track, and here are 2 pieces of the traction rail track, which is always great to have, and 2 nondescript off-brand pieces of curved track, which I will never complain about, as you can never have too much track. Moving on, here is a switch, and it has the female for the 2-track part, and then male on the end right here. A nice switch track, and I believe now, actually, I have a lot of switch tracks, maybe about a dozen, but like I said, never bad to get more Thomas and Friends, or should I say wooden railway track. It is so expensive. If you look online, just a simple track lot with maybe a couple dozen pieces of track, not even lengthy pieces of track, maybe 4-inch straight track, or even just curves, is ridiculously expensive. I prefer to just go on Amazon and go to, I think the company is called Right Track Toys, and just buy their box of off-brand track. It's kind of low quality, but it's better than spending $50, $60, $70 on a couple pieces of name brand track. Here is another 6-inch straight piece of track. And here is something interesting. Here is a ascending piece of track, which is always great to have. I believe that's the second one we've gotten in this lot of stuff. And just as I say that, here is our third. That is awesome to see. And as I say that again, here's something that I am definitely happy about. Here is my first ever piece of ascending track, which is Thomas Wooden Railway branded. This is traction rail track, and it's awesome to have this. So far, I only have this off-brand track of ascending track. And as we talk about that, this is paired along with a very special destination that has been calling my name this entire video, but I think it's high time that we take a look at it. Here, you can see is the Quarry Mine Tunnel, and this is a very classic destination that has been featured in so many videos of Thomas creators and collection videos. Off the top of my head, I can think back to Thomas Wooden Railways Season 1, where I believe there was an accident that featured this destination, and it was on his Season 1 layout. But this destination is just so classic, and I'm honestly shocked I haven't come across it yet to be able to purchase. But it came along with this lot. I can't really remember if I knew that it came along with this, or if I had seen it or forgotten, but it is new to me, at least now with my current memory. So this is awesome to have. You can see how this ascending piece of track goes along with this destination. And if I pull out the camera a little bit here to get a better look, I'll connect a couple pieces of track so we can build a little diorama here. On the bottom, it connects like that. Okay, so that's all good. I'm going to shift it over a little bit right here, so hopefully we can see that. I'll bring in my 2002 Thomas that came with this lot, and if he ascends up the track and then down through the Quarry Mine Tunnel, you can see that he goes through a swinging door on the bottom. I'll angle it like this so we can get a better angle on that. Thomas will once again come up, and if he goes through, you can see how he swings through the door. So let's take a look at the detail of this very simplistic yet very endearing destination, in my opinion. So it is structured around just a normal piece of ascending track, but there is screwed into the sides these, I guess you would call them wooden boards, of detail which kind of structure a mine. And on the bottom it says Tomy UK. So this must have been one of the later, oh, it says 2004 Ghislaine. But although, since it says Tomy UK, I believe this was probably the later releases of this mine. I'll have to look on the Thomas Wooden Railway wiki and see if this came along with a set or maybe was still individually released during this time. I'll put up a little thing on the screen to give you more information on that. Regardless, on the side here, there is just chock full of detail. There's this plastic beam which kind of connects the whole wooden structure together, and on the side there is different wooden beams going all different directions, a lamp, a shovel, and a pickaxe, and a sign that says danger, closed mine. Here is a little cart, a red cart with coal in it, and just look at the rock detail. There really was a lot of care put into this item with all the different details on this sticker right here. On the other side, it is mirrored, so it's the same detail, but overall, a really nice looking item that is simplistic, but gets the job done detail-wise. On the back of it here, there is the swinging plastic door that says keep out, and when an engine goes down that, it will just swing down the door. I guess the only criticism of this item that I can think of is that if an engine tries to go up the quarry mine tunnel, it gets stuck. As you can see, Thomas gets stuck with the door being pushed backwards. So that is maybe a lack of foresight in total play features of this item. But honestly, I think it probably wasn't intended to be used like that. And the main action of fun is sending Thomas flying down the ascending track through the doors and crashing through them. So I think that's enough said on this awesome destination. I am so pleased that this was included in the lot. Honestly, this probably makes up for about a fifth of the price. If we say maybe on eBay you could buy this for a cheap price of $10, if I paid $50 for this whole bag of goodies, that makes up a fifth of the price. So I'm not displeased about that by any means, and I'll put it off to the side here so we can take a look at some more cool stuff. And speaking of cool stuff, maybe not so cool, but definitely something interesting for a Thomas fan. Here is a Chuggington character, and if my memory serves me correct from the very vague recollections I have of the Chuggington show on Disney Junior when it was airing, this is Brewster. I think Coco is the green one, and Wilson is the red one, and I believe Brewster is the blue one. Let's see on the bottom if it says his name. It actually doesn't say his name, but what also is interesting is this is labeled as Learning Curve brand. I didn't think that Learning Curve made these toys, but I guess since it's so similar to Take Along, except for the metal couplings, but also the Wooden Railway counterpart of this toy is so similar to Thomas Wooden Railway, I guess that kind of makes sense. But going back to Chuggington as a TV show, obviously, no Thomas fan really appreciates the Chuggington TV show. It is seen as a ripoff of Thomas and Friends. I'm not sure if the show is still in production or airing. Last time I kind of thought anything about it, I think it was around season 5 or 6 maybe of the show. But it did air on Disney Junior here in the United States, and I caught an episode or two, but it's just really not up my alley. The cartoonish, wacky movements of the engines and just the unrealistic nature of the whole thing never really appealed to me. The whole realism of Thomas and Friends is really what keeps me going with the series, and Chuggington just had none of that. So even though it had trains in it, it wasn't stuff that I was interested in. However, this is a pretty nice model for what it's worth, although it is of a show I don't particularly enjoy. You can see on the side it has some nice detailing in the metal, and this is fully metal, only the bottom here, the bottom chassis, and the wheels are made of plastic. So that's actually pretty good. Let's see, I forgot what year I said this was. It says 2010. I can't remember when Chuggington as a show came out. Maybe around 2008 is my best guess. But here is the side of Brewster, as I said. I couldn't tell you anything about his actual character. I haven't watched Chuggington in forever, so I have no idea. He has 4 wheels on this side, 4 wheels on this side, so 8 wheels in total. And he has a door detail, some windows. It looks like he was scratched or dinged up a little around here, his side, so there is some damage on the back. Oh, that's a really nice logo. You can see right there, there's a triangular logo, and it looks like that is the depiction of a steam train, interestingly enough. Let's see if I can get that close enough to the camera. There, I think you can see it there. It's a steam engine. On the side, the detailing is mirrored, and his face, which is only a little bit creepy, those dead eyes, and then how his mouth stretches across the whole front of his front half. He has not the metal couplings, but sort of a ball and joint coupling, kind of similar, I'm thinking, to Lego, if anyone knows about that. There is a ball and joint coupling that they introduced a while back that they use a lot for Technic stuff and just stuff in general. So that kind of reminds me of what that is, but you can see on the back that it just kind of connects in and the coupling is able to rotate pretty freely so you can go around curves and stuff like that. I'm not too knowledgeable on this version or merchandise range, so if you can key me into any details about track that may be used or different years that this was produced, by all means, let me know. But that was Brewster. So he's an interesting character, a divisive character, I'd assume, in the Thomas and Friends fandom. But moving on, here is some more 6-inch curve track. And here is a piece of straight track. I'm not sure exactly the length. I'm assuming 8-inch straight track, since this is a 6-inch one, so I think that's what that is. This is actually in pretty good condition, and it looks awesome, honestly. I can't wait to use that for my videos. Moving on, here is some 2-inch connecting pieces of track. Usually I use this in layouts or sets when things aren't quite fitting together, but I can piece it to be complete with these small pieces of track. Here is something that, oh, I'm actually surprised by this. I thought this might have been another one of those quote-unquote McDonald's toys, but it actually isn't. Here is something interesting. It looks almost like a mix between a caboose and a coach, not any specific coach design. But if we look on the bottom here, although it does feel pretty plasticky, it says Matchbox. And, oh, it was upside down, so even if it focused, you couldn't read it. And it says Matchbox, and the year is 1978. It says passenger coach. And this is honestly pretty awesome. It says made in England as well. If I bring in here my other Matchbox train that we took a look at, and these can couple together and make a nice looking small little train with the 040 pulling that solo coach. But this is awesome. When I was going through this bag trying to find cool stuff to pull out, I kind of left this be because I thought it was just some dumb, maybe Happy Meal toy or something like that. But no, it is a part of this Matchbox train. Ironically, before this part of the video, I was quickly looking on eBay, trying to see the price of this 040. It's about $5 or $6 on eBay. But now that I have this coach, that actually increases the value of it. And I am very, very happy. I saw that there's different colors of this engine, like a green variant. And I also saw a pannier tank engine, which is awesome, although a little bit pricey. So maybe that will be on my radar for one day. However, going back to this small coach, it has pretty opaque windows. You can still see through them, but they're a dark blue color, and it has a plastic shell of a body, some nice rail detailing along the ends of the coach, buffer detailing and the couplings once again, and on the side the sticker is starting to wear away, but it looks like it said 431, 432, and some arrow ornate designing on the side. On the other, this is completely worn off, the sticker. And on the top, just some random striped and these two little dots on the top. So pretty simplistic, yet an awesome addition to my collection, and something I'm genuinely shocked and surprised about. I did not see that coming. So I guess we'll leave this 040 along with his new coach. So that's just awesome. I wasn't expecting that in the slightest. Here is, once again, another tree. We can never have enough of those, I guess. And moving on, there's still some more track. Here is another switch, this time with the male ends. And here's another piece of 6-inch curve track, the traction rail variety. I've never had those before, so I'm elated to get a lot of those. I'm wondering, perhaps, if they came in a set, maybe with this Quarry Mine Tunnel, but who knows? I'll have to research it. Some more curve track. I'm much more happy to go through all this wooden railway track as opposed to that stupid gray plastic track there in the back. Here are some more connecting pieces of track. This one has the male ends, and this one is just one of the standard ones. Here's another 6-inch piece of straight track, and some more curved track, the small variety. Here are some plastic pieces that I do not know the origin of. We can just chuck those to the side. It looks like we have yet another sign. This one is funny. On this side, it says Magic Tracks, and I guess it's fitting for Thomas and the Magic Railroad. On this side, it says Do Not Enter. So if one side says Magic Tracks and the other said Do Not Enter, that kind of makes sense, as Magic Railroad, hint, hint, is not a favorite film of mine. And if it was in theaters, do not enter that theater by any means. I really don't like that movie. Here is a 6-inch piece of straight track and some more curved track. A great amount of track in this. Here is some more track. And let's take a look at an engine now. Or maybe not an engine. Maybe we can take a look at... Oh, it just flew out of the bag as I tried to pick it up. This monstrosity of a toy. And my best guess is that this is from Tale of the Brave. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't watched Tale of the Brave in probably even longer than Blue Mountain Mystery. Let's look on the bottom and try to do some investigating. It says 2013, so that's not helpful at all. It is labeled Scrap on the bottom, so that's a pretty ambiguous name. But it does have the ugly magnets, I should point out, so it must be from 2015. So perhaps it is from Tale of the Brave, although maybe it's from an episode. I'm trying to think of an episode. Maybe there was one with Marion where she deals with Scrap, a Scrap monster, or maybe Henry. Maybe I'm thinking of Flatbeds of Fear. I can't picture the exact episode, but this must have come either in Tale of the Brave or an episode. You can see it almost looks like an elephant here with its seemingly long trunk and these big eyes. And it is very long. If I bring in Luke, it is almost double the length of Luke, which I guess makes sense for, the actual models. But for a take-along toy, this is very long. And I'm not sure if this would even fit along the curves of the track. I guess we'll have to experiment with that. Anyway, the magnets are pretty clouded over. And this is mostly made, if I'm trying to feel my way around, of plastic, I do think. It's heavy, but that might just be the sheer size of it and not necessarily the metal component of it. It does have 8 wheels, which are kind of closely spaced together, and then this long flatbed is the best description I could give it, where this hunk of scrap is. It has this roof, and then it looks like almost scales on the back right here, pointy scales. Then it has this random ladder thing that ratchets down. I have really no idea what this is. This is pretty kooky. I think that's the only moving aspect of this model. But it is an interesting thing to have, if I can say that. And it's something I was not expecting to find in this lot. It kind of seems out of the blue. I'm not sure if this was part of a pack or a set or just sold individually. I can't imagine that it was sold individually, as what kid, or parent for that matter, would go up to the shelves of Toys R Us or Walmart or something and see this on the shelf and think, this is definitely what I want to get for little Timmy's birthday or Christmas or whatever. This would just not have sold. So this must have been some part of a pack or something like that. Anyway, moving on from that, another great take-along, or should I say take-and-play, item to get. Let's move on to a different merchandise range and take a look at something that is Trackmaster. Here is a Trackmaster truck, which is awesome to see. And if my memory serves me correct, this is from the later era of Trackmaster, maybe in the late 2010s, late 2000s, early 2010s. Let's see if I can confirm that with the bottom. 2009 Mattel, so that is, I guess, marginally helpful, although you can never really trust the dates of these things. And the interesting play feature about this one that I knew when I immediately saw the shape is that if you flip it over, it looks like there's nothing in the truck, but then when you flip it over, there is coal inside. And I wonder even if this is a play feature with one of the items that we took a look at so far. Now, my best guess is that this coal hopper is what goes with this truck. So I guess we can only test it out and see if my hypothesis is correct. Let's bring in some plastic track here to make a little bit of a scene like we did with the quarry mine tunnel. And we'll also bring in Thomas. Here's the Trackmaster Thomas, and he doesn't work, but we can have him roll along with this coal truck / car, depending on where you live in the terminology. Anyway, let's push Thomas through, and my guess is that the gears on the bottom of this thing might interact with this destination in some way. So if we... okay. Well, you can see it works, but I kind of did it backwards. As the coal doesn't magically rise up into the coal hopper, we have to do it the other way around. So let's pretend there's no coal in this item so far, but then when we move Thomas through this destination under the coal hopper, you can see that the coal magically goes in and then comes back out. So that's actually, as you can see, if I film it dead on, where there's not much room to see the change actually happen, the flip, so to speak, it actually looks pretty magical. If he runs through here, we'll say there's no coal in it, and it goes through. I mean, that's pretty seamless. It's very, very simple, but the ingenuity of this as a toy for kids to play with and hopefully be engaged by is very clever. And I'm satisfied with that. I'm glad that I can actually use this destination now. I'm not sure if this came with an engine. Perhaps the Stanley shell that we saw way earlier in the video maybe was the engine originally that came with this destination, or maybe it was part of a set or something. I do vaguely remember a Leo Kim video where Arthur was paired along with this destination, but that might be my memories getting a little bit confused. Anyway, we'll take a look at this truck really quickly. There is the spinning feature of the coal. Besides that, it is pretty plain. We've never really seen a truck like this in the Thomas & Friends TV show, although as a unique design for the play feature, I think it is all well and good. It is a light gray design with some rivet detailing, and it looks like it's almost made of metal, the body is. So that's interesting, and then it has the wheels. So it's always great to get more Trackmaster rolling stock, as they had some great pieces of trucks and other types of cars and rolling stock. So that's always nice to add to my collection. And should I say my ever-expanding Trackmaster collection now that we have all this new stuff. Next, I think we'll take a look at Spencer. So this is, well, I'm not sure if it's take along or take and play. I'll have to investigate, I suppose, but this is Spencer, and you can see it is a light-up Spencer, as there is a lamp to the side of his face, and there is also this button on the top. It looks like the batteries, I guess you could open the batteries from the bottom here, and he has a speaker on the back, so I guess this is actually a talking and light-up Spencer, which is pretty cool. He does feel pretty heavy, heavier than probably a normal Spencer would feel, as there's those components of the batteries and the stuff that makes him talk, stuff like that. It does say Spencer on his bottom. It does have the normal magnets, and it says 2009. So I'm guessing this is actually take and play when they later rebranded. But once again, what I like about these take-along / take-and-play items that is very endearing to someone who mainly focuses on Thomas Wooden Railway is that the wheel configuration is just so accurate. Sometimes they're not exactly right, but it is just so nice to see the wheels in the correct configuration with the big wheels and then the small ones. That is something that Thomas Wooden Railway just never could achieve. It was not necessarily the point of Wooden Railway, but it's something that they really never attempted. Here you can actually, well, except for Emily, she's the only example I can think of where there was a big wheel and small wheels together. You can see Luke. Spencer has small wheels, but Luke's wheels are even smaller than Spencer's, just adding to the gauge aspect of their different gauges, and that is just really nice. I don't think that Spencer came with a tender, which is a little bit of a shame, so it'll have to be tenderless. But regardless, I think there's still a great Spencer model. His face does protrude out, funnily. Maybe that's just a design with all Spencers. But the Thomas Wooden Railway Spencer has more of a flat face, where this one is almost a curved shape, which looks a little bit funny. You can see how big his forehead looks there. And of course he has that funnel and the detailing on the side with the nameplate that is in sort of a red and gold color. Overall, a nice model of Spencer by all means. and it's nice to have him in my collection. Moving on, I think we'll take a look at some trucks next. These are take-along / take-and-play trucks, and these are something I have never had. I've never had any rolling stock in take-along / take-and-play before, but now I finally do. Oh, that made a loud noise. Along with the Scrap Monster, now I have these troublesome trucks that are kind of like the cargo cars of the take-along universe. Let's see what they're dated. 2003 learning curve. Maybe it will focus if the camera likes me enough. I don't think you can really see that all that well because the black on black doesn't show up too great. But they are labeled 2003 learning curve, so these are take-along. Just a little bit after Ertl finally went out of business and they moved the metallic range to take-along. I'm very glad to have these, as now we can see Luke. It looks like he's pulling these, and that honestly looks great. I don't have practically any take-along / take-and-play track, but I think more so than Thomas Wooden Railway, you don't really need the track. These can just move along the carpet or the hardwood floor or the grass or whatever and still look fine. And rolling stock was never the biggest aspect of these take-along items, not at least like Wooden Railway, but it is always nice to get sort of these trucks and stuff that are not very gimmicky. They're just standard cargo cars or trucks or whatever you want to call them. They are kind of beat up. You can see that there's a fair amount of edge wear, but still a great addition, and I'm very happy and pleased with those. Moving on, there is just some more Wooden Railway track. One more plastic piece. I think that's the last one, so that's the last time I'll ever have to say dumb plastic piece. And just some more straight track. And that is it for the track. Now we're purely in just to Thomas and Friends models, and there's a lot to choose from here. I think next we'll take a look at this, which is a little disappointing. It is Edward's tender, but there is no Trackmaster Edward. So it's just his tender here, so it feels so light because it's just all made of plastic. I think the only metal part about this is the screws. If we take a look at the bottom, it says 2013 Mattel. So this is when they turned it into Trackmaster Revolution, and this is Edward's tender. Edward is my favorite character, as you could probably guess from my channel name. I know, big shocker. But it's unfortunate we didn't get Edward's main body. However, it's kind of funny to just have his tender, a little rinky-dink plastic thing. So that's cool to have that. Nothing else to say about that one. And the final Trackmaster item in this is something that is pretty interesting. It is another piece of rolling stock, and this time it is a tanker, which looks like a fuel tanker, or you could call it an oil tanker, or if you're in the UK, maybe a petrol tanker. We'll bring in another destination here that is related to this tanker. It is this oil derrick. I couldn't think of that name earlier on in the video. I don't really know why, but now that time has passed, I remember that the name is not like an oil pump or tower, it's an oil derrick. Although, actually, I'm not sure if this is what that depicts. Regardless, you can see that I don't really know the function of this thing. I mean, I guess there must be some kind of play feature with this, though I'm not really sure still what this lever does. But it has the same logo, so I'm assuming this is the same thing, and maybe it was paired along with this destination, this tanker was. And on the bottom, let's see what it says. It says 2000, and I'm assuming Mattel. Yeah, 2009 Mattel Ghislaine. But once again, a great piece of rolling stock to get. And I actually do already have a tanker in Trackmaster, but nothing is better than one tanker than having two, so I'm totally fine with that. That's another great item to have. We'll keep chugging along here, no pun intended. I think next we'll take a look at our favorite green engine, Henry, who has seen better days. He is very edge-worn and has a lot of metal paint taken off of him. You can see his exposed metal. His face actually isn't too badly damaged, but this is something that I'm very pleased with this a lot, that I've been meaning to get some more of the Steam team for Take-Along. I think after I complete or get near perfection in my Thomas Wooden Railway collection, I'd either like to move on to Ertl or Take-Along. And Take-Along, I currently have a Thomas that's in pretty good condition, and I have some other odd miscellaneous characters, as I mentioned, but I have none of the other Steam Team members. But now, I don't have Henry's tender, but I do have the body of Henry. Although he is beaten up, he still looks great. And once again, I have to praise the accurate wheel configuration, or pretty close wheel configuration of Henry here, with his big driving wheels and then these small wheels in the front. His face, as I mentioned, is a classic Henry face from the early 2000s. It reminds me of the hit era, sort of season 8. And on the side, he has some nice detailing of his molded boiler along with his wheel arches. And of course, he is in his new shape. You can see here in the back, he has some detailing of his cab. It is an open cab. And overall, I think this is a really nice looking Henry. Let's see what year he's labeled. He's labeled 2002, and actually I didn't know this about take-along items, but if the camera would focus, you can see it says Henry right there. I didn't know they actually put that on the bottom of the models. I'll have to check out my Thomas to see if that's similar. Well, actually, do you know what? I'll check out these and see maybe if these say cargo car or something like that. These don't say cargo car, so maybe that's just something with the engines. Regardless, let's keep moving on. And let's take a look at someone we just mentioned, who is Thomas. Here is another version of Thomas. So now I have another take-along Thomas, which is always great. And honestly, this has to be one of the best depictions of Thomas in merchandise, dare I say, ever. I have always been infatuated with this model. I think it just looks so great. He is so cute looking. His proportions are toy size, but accurate enough that you get the general idea of Thomas's actual shape in the television series. And overall, just a really great looking model. It looks like his wheels are sort of faded here. They look bluish green. Although, I mean, he's still a nice looking model. He has a yellow whistle, which I guess is unrealistic. He has more of a gold whistle, but, you know, realisticness aside, if I can use that word sparingly, he has the red stripes on his boiler and his side tanks. He has the nice number 1 painted. He has a wheel arch, and just overall, compare this Thomas to this Thomas. You can see just the proportions of this one are so much more accurate to his actual model, which is why I like this one so much. He has that cute Thomas face, and I mean, if there were thousands of this wooden railway Thomas produced, even millions, there must have been tens of millions of this Thomas. He must be in couch cushions all across the world, just waiting to be found. And on the bottom, you can once again see it is labeled Thomas, and this time it says 2002 Ghislaine. So once again, Learning Curve Ghislaine made this Thomas, and he is a nice looking model, and I'm glad to have him in addition to the other Thomases that I have from Take Along. I think we'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone here and take a look at Percy. And oh, I was actually surprised by this. I thought these were the same exact engine, but no, they are actually 2 different Percys, which is great that I don't have duplicates, but rather have an alternative version of Percy. We'll take a look at the normal one first. As I mentioned, I have a coal dust Percy or a dirty Percy with coal speckles that came with an engine wash set. But this one is the first normal Percy I have. And once again, his proportions are just so nice looking. You can see his face right there. He has the buffer detailing. And on the side, the number 6 with his coal bunker that's depicted in gray. On the bottom, it says Percy. This time, he is labeled 2002. Oh, I thought it would be different since his name is in white, but I guess it's all the same, just different variations on how they labeled these items. But overall, a very nice looking Percy that I'm very happy with. Now we'll take a look at the surprise face Percy. Too bad his eyebrows are worn off. Maybe I can fix those with a Sharpie or something. We'll see what year this guy is. He is labeled also 2002. And dare I say this Percy comes from the DVD Sodor Story collection. Maybe this came with Percy Takes a Plunge, although I'm not going to venture too far into that theory as I have no backing of that just sort of hypothesis I put out there. But maybe that's what this guy is from when it came with a little diorama and a sampler DVD, although don't quote me on that. I mean, if I'm correct, I'll put it in the video. If not, I'll explain myself and set myself on the right track information-wise. But maybe it just came with some type of pack or something like that, although I'm greatly excited to have a surprise face Percy. In a similar vein, and speaking of vein, a very vain engine, here are 2 versions of Take Along James. We'll take a look at this version first, which is a normal James, and once again, a great looking model with the exception of the gray wheels. I guess in promotional material, it kind of looked like they gave him these dark gray wheels, which is dumb. I mean, I know his Bachmann model, I believe, had gray wheels as well, which is just kind of stupid for James. I mean, like this James, oh wait, I didn't even talk about this. So this James has the correct black wheels, and let's see, what year is this? This is labeled 2009. I guess this one might have been 2002, so that's why he has different wheels. But nonetheless, how could they get it wrong the first time, but then finally realize he has black wheels? It just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, this is still a very nice looking James model, gray wheels aside. His face is almost entirely intact, except a little crack in the top of his face, which is unfortunate, if I could show it on the camera and not go off screen. His dome is almost completely worn off, paint-wise, although, once again, still nice proportions. I'm very happy to have this James, another character I've been wanting to get for a while now, and take along at least. And finally, it actually came with a tender, and this tender is so cute. Look at the 6 wheels on here, the small wheels. And I think this is sort of a tender done right with the larger wheels. If we think back to Thomas Wooden Railway 2022, those tenders, specifically Rebecca, were just so wonky with how they were designed, and I think the wheels spaced apart just looks so weird. But this version of the tender actually looks pretty splendid, and I think James would agree. So we're getting down now to the last couple of items, so let's keep going along here. And next up, we have something that is very reminiscent of many different depictions of merchandise we have seen before, and this is a troublesome truck, specifically a gray troublesome truck. So if we look at the face, you can see that is a very classic troublesome truck face. We've seen that on many different models throughout the years, and specifically I can think back to this reminding me of the giggling troublesome truck and the gray troublesome truck from Wooden Railway, specifically the older 2000s version of that 2-pack. And on the top here, you could probably guess this, but it has a similar play feature to this Trackmaster truck that we have right here. So if you see that this one flips, and then it flips its load, and then you can see, like we talked about, that it goes from being empty to being filled with coal. This troublesome truck has a similar play feature, where if you flip it around, it goes from being empty to having a coal load. And this one is labeled 2002, so this one actually predates this Trackmaster design. So I'm actually curious to wonder if this one is the first one to ever feature this sort of flip and reveal design. I'm not totally sure about that, but that might be my best guess. And overall, even though the proportions of this truck are a little bit big for an engine such as Percy, I still think that it is not too tall that it looks ridiculous, and although it's not the exact shape of a Sodor troublesome truck, I still think that it looks very nice. Let's count the planks here, actually. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 maybe? About 6 or 7 planks on this truck, and then of course the detailing right here, which all looks very nice. It has black wheels, and overall a very nice toy, and once again, I'm happy to have more take-along rolling stock. That's always something that I've been interested in having and just have never come across before. And we're back to Edward here, and unfortunately, it isn't a Trackmaster Edward. However, it is an Edward that doesn't have the tender. So I guess that we could sort of do that. I mean, that looks a little suspect, if I do say so myself, with the huge tender and Edward. But as I said, unfortunately, this take-along Edward doesn't come with a tender, so that's quite a shame. However, I still love that he has the accurate wheel configuration, and like I was saying, this is one of those take-along items I have just always wanted to get. On eBay, he goes for about $15 to $20, so I've never really battened down the hatches and decided to purchase this as of yet. But now I don't need to, as it came in this lot. I just need his tender, which probably won't actually be that hard to find. And this Edward is surprisingly in very good condition. Only his eyebrows are a little worn off there, but nothing, as I mentioned, a Sharpie couldn't fix. He has a yellow whistle once again, but his boiler detailing with the handrail, his side tanks, and then, his wheel arches, I meant to say. But overall, a nice Edward face with the buffer detailing. On the back, he once again has that open cab. And ironically, I didn't notice this before, but you can see attached to his magnet is actually a screw. So here's a mini little screw if the camera would focus. You can see that little screw right there. So I'm not sure what that actually came. Oh, do you know what it came from? You can see there's no screw on on his bottom. So it looks like this screw actually came from there. So maybe we'll have to test that out later and see if this Edward can come apart. It looks like he is a little bit loose there. However, that's funny that that fell off and attached to his back magnet. Overall, though, a nice looking Edward, and I'm always glad to add another depiction of Edward into my merchandise collection. And now, children, cover your eyes. As you can see, there is a hideous face. This is not something I ever thought I'd get, but look where we are now. And this is the Tomy 2011 Thomas that is notorious for its subpar CGI representation of the face. So this Thomas, ironically, was only released for 1 year, which, I mean, kind of makes sense with his, should I say, spooky Halloween face. Speaking of another holiday, this actually reminds me of that short, a YouTube short I made a while ago on Christmas, talking about obscure Thomas wooden railway items, where I mentioned this Thomas, and at the time I didn't have him. I never really thought I'd pick him up, as I have no desire to have this face staring at me when I look at my Thomas shelf. However, he organically came in this lot, so now he is in my collection, which I'm not actually displeased about, as although I wouldn't spend money to go out and actively buy this Thomas, he is a good memento and reminder of an era, a short era, be it, of Thomas Wooden Railway. So his details are pretty much the same as a 2003 Thomas, and honestly, pretty much the same as this Thomas right here. You can see that his boiler on his side tanks are like virtually the same. Maybe his lining is a little bit darker, but besides that, it is pretty much the same toy. His face, as I mentioned, is just not very good. His eyebrows are kind of worn off, but you can see just how bloated and just creepy looking his face is. Look at those dead eyes and that creepy sort of thin smile. I just am not a fan, and not many other people are a fan either. Honestly, though, I don't think Thomas is the worst offender. I think, honestly, James probably has maybe the worst looking face. I can't remember what Percy's face looks like if they made a Percy, but maybe Percy, I mean, his Mattel face kind of looks weird too, so maybe he'd be a contender. Although, like I said, greatly appreciative to get more Thomas Wooden Railway, which is always a treat. Moving on now, we have another Thomas Wooden Railway item, and this is actually another Sodor line caboose. So this marks the third Sodor line caboose in my collection. I originally didn't have that many, but now we're getting to the point where it seems like I actually have a lot of these things. So if I go to the back here, or should I say bottom of this item, you can see it is another Tomy item. So I'm wondering actually maybe if this Thomas came in a set with this caboose and somehow the curve track around here made up a little set. So I'll have to research that further and see maybe if that is accurate. Nonetheless, oh, I went to the wrong item here. Back to the Sodor line caboose. This is my third rendition of the Sodor line caboose, and I'm actually pretty pleased to get another one of these, as it's never bad to get more rolling stock or just general railway stuff that you need, like brake fans and cabooses and stuff of the like. It actually doesn't have that much edge wear and might be the best conditioned Sodor line caboose that I have. And I think compared to my other ones, it is no different. I do think it's interesting to point out that since Sodor is a British island, it's weird that there is a caboose, which is definitely a wholly American concept, but I think that's just the learning curves, Americanization of Thomas Wooden Railway, and I'm not really complaining. I mean, it's a toy line, so the accuracy is not paramount. However, I thought there would be something notable to point out that I feel like not a lot of people talk about, although we just always associate Thomas Wooden Railway. Oh yeah, let's talk about cabooses. Anyway, moving on, here is a non-Thomas Wooden Railway item, yet something that's still very, very interesting, and something I was actually shocked about. Here is an Ertl item, which I don't think anyone was expecting. That kind of came out of left field. And this is an Ertl duck. And I never thought that an Ertl item would be in this collection. It kind of seems like all this stuff is from the 2000s, maybe early 2010s, with the exception of this Matchbox from the late 70s. However, this Ertl, let's see the date of when this Ertl was made. It says 1990, so this is actually fairly old, and for its age, its condition is not half bad. Its funnel probably has the most paint wear, and this left buffer right here, but besides that, you can see he has minimal chips to his paint, and overall, he looks like a very splendid engine indeed. And it's just so awesome to have another Ertl item. Although I'm not the biggest fan of their range, I think the actually duck is a great depiction of an engine. I don't know why my thumb was so in the way. I apologize, duck. I was covering up his face. But you can see he's actually looking off to his, I guess it would be his right or left. And he actually has a very classic duck face. And I've never paid too much attention to this Ertl item in particular, as I just had no interest in going out and buying him. But now that I have him, I'm very pleased. And ironically, let's compare this duck to another duck, which is a Thomas Wooden Railway duck. And this one is the 2003 variant. And once again, I'm super pleased to have this duck, as I have the 2013 Mattel duck, but not this classic variant that so many other people have. So let's look at the wheels here. And it looks like it does, in fact, say 2003. So I think maybe Duck stopped production in 2009 when Learning Curve stopped producing the toys. But if we compare these two ducks, you can see which one is more accurate and which one is more a stylized depiction, which is the wooden railway one on the right. But this duck, as I said, is very accurate with his detailing and honestly his proportions in general. If we put him off to the side and take a look at this Thomas Wooden Railway duck, the biggest signifier of this 2003 duck is the lack of a funnel, which is just shocking in this day and age. In 2003, they still didn't put a funnel on this guy, similar to Donald and Douglas. But by that time, those engines were almost retired, while this duck stuck around and just never got a funnel until the Mattel version. So that's why I've never really been the biggest fan of this duck, as the funnel just really adds a lot to an engine and kind of completes it. Without it, it looks a little bit naked. Regardless, though, I think it is still a pretty nice duck face. He has some edge wear on his nose and his eyebrows. Nonetheless, a very nice looking item. You can see on the back sort of a widow's peak, and that widow's peak is kind of indented, which is kind of interesting. So there's not really any part that is protruding out, but you can see the outline of that. So that is pretty interesting, and it kind of looks like that's where the model was sort of glued together in the factory, how it kind of interlocks, maybe like a puzzle piece. It says duck on the bottom, obviously, but once again, very happy to get a different variant of an engine I already have, and now I can say I have a 2003 duck for what it's worth, so that's awesome, and I'll just add him to the pile of Thomas stuff there. And the final item, as you can see here, is a Thomas Wooden Railway 2003 James. And I'm miffed about this, honestly, as this is my second James without a tender. I have another 2002 James that doesn't have a tender, and I have a 2003 James that is a for display only variant that has a tender, but this one doesn't. So that's my second in my collection. So honestly, I'll need to go onto eBay and try to find some James tenders to complete some of these models, as what's a tender engine without their tender? So here we can see James's face is, as the others, pretty intact except for the eyebrows. And the only major thing I'm noticing about this James, he has some edge wear and weird patterns on his cab, but also his dome is completely worn off, and it looks like it's actually gotten to the undercoat of his dome there. You can see sort of a bluish, tealish color there where the gold dome was supposed to be. But this James, for all it's worth, is in pretty good condition, and I'm never displeased about getting another item like this, although I really have no use for another 2003 James. It's still nice to get more Thomas Wooden Railway, and it still adds to the value in total of this whole lot that I was able to secure. So going to the wheels, you can see it does say, oh, actually, I am mistaken. So I was saying this is a 2003 James. The wheels actually say 2002. So this must have been a later 2002 James, as he has the indent in the funnel, and I don't know any other differences, but I do stand corrected, so I apologize about that error. I won't go back and change anything, as this is my raw reaction, but I guess it is a 2002 James that is different from the 2003 one that other 2002 one that I have. So with that being said, I think we'll add this James to the pile, and as you can see, this bag here, somehow it is finally empty after all that, after going through all that dumb track that we took a look at. This bag is finally emptied of all of its contents, and now we know all the train goodies that were inside of that bag, and the smaller one too, I guess. And I think it's high time that we move on to a different part of the video, where let's try to recap the different amounts of stuff that we got and show it all in total, maybe put some batteries and engines, and really get an idea of the value of what I found here today. So this is a change of pace. Usually on my channel, the camera is stationary. However, for this, I thought it would be nice to set all these items out, as there's just so many of them. So I rearranged my filming area a little bit to give myself some more room, and now you can see all of these items laid out. So why don't we just go through these, and you'll notice that there's white slips of paper by each respective merchandise, and the reason for that being is that I didn't want to test myself with trying to memorize all the official names of all of these sets and different merchandise pieces and toys. So I decided to make it easy for you and me and just put it down on the ground right there next to the respective item. So here, first off, we'll talk about the miscellaneous plastic pile, which is just a pile of some random plastic stuff that I found in the bags that I took a look at. And honestly, I am probably just going to trash this or maybe donate it back, as there is no use to any of this stuff. It's just odds and ends. So I'm not too concerned about that. I just put it in a pile there. Here you can see I was correct about this being Imaginarium, and I should mention I did some research on all of these things and tried to piece together all the individual pieces and components of the sets to make a cohesive idea or concept of what all of these things came from. Anyway, this says Imaginarium Power Rails Sawmill River. So Imaginarium, of course, makes wooden railway, and they were the Toys R Us sort of train brand. But they also made these, as they call them, power rails, which are RC controlled by these controllers, and I believe they also have battery power. Now, I am not too handy, and I tried to fix the batteries, but as you can see here with this diesel, unfortunately, I think I did more damage than good, as I can't get the shell of his body back on, and also some screws and stuff fell out of his body, so I think I might have done some damage to that model. But regardless, I can work on that later. For now, it's just important to see that this set is not complete. So over there where the waterfall is, there should be sort of a mountain. So an interesting thing about this is that I didn't realize this first off, but these log pieces are magnetic. So it's kind of interesting that this log cutter or blade will actually buzz through these logs and then separate them. So I think that's actually a really cool play feature and something that is very simple, yet works to great effect. So I was very pleased with that. Unfortunately, the structure or mountain or whatever you want to call it that this thing sits upon is not in the set, which is unfortunate. And you can also see that I had to use these wooden risers because this set did not come with the risers that are actually in the set online that I found. So I'm not really sure what happened here. You can see there's the water element from before that we took a look at. But like I said, I'm not really sure what happened, where the rest of the stuff is. Maybe it got trashed. I'm not really sure. And it also didn't come with the steam engine, only those 2 cargo cars. It did come with the bridge and some other stuff, but there is some track left over, and I kind of gave up on trying to piece this together. It seems like the risers actually aren't the ones that I saw online, so I don't know if there's different renditions of it or something like that. But nonetheless, this is probably about 75% complete, and I think that's good for what it's worth. So now we'll move on. As I said, there's some extra risers and some of that extra plastic track. We'll move on to the other Imaginarium's Power Rails set, which is called the Gold Mountain. And eagle-eyed viewers can probably notice there's no Gold Mountain, and some of the set is missing, like this previous set. So the deal with this one is there's supposed to be a huge Gold Mountain over there with some risers and some other odds and ends, but it didn't come with the set, and it's kind of incomplete. It does come with this engine. It's missing one of the cargo cars. It came with the trees, and there's the one sign, but it's missing a couple signs. And I'll actually put a list on the video of all the different components and pieces to the set that it's missing for ease instead of me trying to just say them off the top of my head. It did come with the crane, and you can see the package there with the little box. So that's good. And then the switches here. And what happens is the track curves around into the mountain, I believe, and then the mountain has an underpass area, and also it goes over the mountain over there. But like I said, the risers didn't seem to fit, and also it seemed like there was different curvatures and heights to the ascending track. So I'm not really sure what happened there. I just kind of left it be because I didn't want to tinker with this too much and waste too much time. Because honestly, this is really not what I'm focused on. I care more about the stuff over there, which is the Thomas stuff. And before we actually take a look at that, let's move over here. You can see this cute little polar bear squishy or whatever that we found. And here's some of those Matchbox cars with the weird hook coupling system that Adventures had. And here's that McDonald's toy I sort of mentioned earlier in the video. It's just a random coach car, nothing too special. Probably won't hold on to it as it really has no value to me. Here, we'll move over before we look at the really good stuff. Here you can see that there is some of this Duplo track, and I'm still not sure if this is necessarily from the Thomas and Friends sets, but nonetheless, it's great to get more of this Duplo track, and now I think I can actually complete a full loop. As this is about 3/4 of a loop, and I already have enough track, so that will be great to have. And you can see there's also sort of a railway crossing right there as well. Here is some wooden track, and there's this random wooden truck, the front of it, I am guessing, which is, I guess, useful for custom or something maybe. And then here's the other Imaginarium wooden coal loader or whatever. I can use this in scenery and set dressing for my videos. And there's some wooden track. You can see the curves and the straight pieces. And it's also great to get more switches and also ascending track. You can never have too much of that. I will point out there's the black track. It only came with 3 pieces. Not really sure what that's a part of, but I just thought I'd mention that. And I'll quickly make my way over here. You can see the remnants of the bags that all of this stuff came in. So I'll probably be tossing those as well, although they did serve a good purpose in holding all of these great goodies. Anyway, moving over here, you can see here is that wind-up engine that we took a look at before, and I will definitely be keeping this as I think it's pretty cool and also funny how fast the side rods move when you pull it back. Although it doesn't work on the carpet, maybe I'll test it on a hardwood floor or tile or something and see if it works better. Here you can see the Matchbox train, the 040 with its coach, which I'm very happy to have. And of course over here is the Quarry Mine Tunnel, which came with that piece of ascending track. Here you can see I pieced together some of these sets. Based on the amount of track, I believe that Quarry Mine Tunnel was just sold separately and was just part of a destination and not part of a set. So that's why I left it be. Over there you can see Brewster from Chuggington. Not sure what I'll do with him, but I'll probably keep him around. And then of course here's the great Thomas stuff that I got. Here is the 2002 Thomas, 2002 James, surprisingly enough, not a 2003 one, without a tender, and old style duck. And then here are some take-along/take-and-play items. We've got Thomas, Edward, Henry, unfortunately those ones without the tender, Percy, Surprise Face Percy, James, James, Talking James I guess it's called, and a Spencer as well without the tender. One of the characters I'm happiest to get, which is Luke, a troublesome truck with that flip feature, and 2 more trucks, and also that scrap monster, which I still think kind of looks like an elephant. Anyway, you can see here I've made a little set, and I've used as a substitute some of this off-brand track just to finish this set. And based on the caboose and the Thomas, I believe this is a simple starter set, and of course it's missing a lot of the trimmings like Sir Topham Hatt and a tree or a signal or whatever. But since it's the 2011 Thomas with the Tomy caboose, I believe this is maybe the Tomy version of that simple starter set, which is basically almost just a circle, more of an oval with the small straight pieces. But there was not enough traction rail, so that's why I used a substitute. Anyway, moving on, here you can see that there's some extra of this new style Trackmaster track, and I'm not really sure if this goes with any of these sets. However, I just decided to put it here. Maybe it came with a track expansion pack or something like that, but for right now, I'll just leave it be. Always great to get this crossover piece and also these switches, especially this Y switch, which will be really useful if I want to ever build a layout or something like that. Now you can see we have another set, which is the Elsbridge Station starter set. I was only able to find a couple mentions of this on the internet, so I'm not sure if this was something that was made up, but since the station, which is Elsbridge, not Maithwaite as I posited before, but since this kind of goes with this oval and I saw it online, I decided to put this together. So maybe I'm going out on a limb and saying this was a part of a quote-unquote Elsbridge Station starter set. We also have this pump and fill oilwork set, which came with, this is supposed to be sort of a pump and oil derrick, and then you can see over here where's the station, and it's supposed to come with dart, but of course it doesn't come with that. And maybe some of these track pieces are associated with that, but there's not enough to make a complete set. Speaking of not complete sets, we have Thomas at the coal station, which came, I assume, with this Thomas. It came with this signal box and this piece of, or this truck, excuse me, that flips, and of course this coal hopper. And of course that didn't come with all the track, but it did come with these important pieces of destination, so I'm happy with that. I also think there was a water tower included with that. And last but not least, we have Talking Thomas's Bust Through Mindset. So this one has that tunnel with the play feature where it opens up like that. And I think actually this is a pretty rare set, so I'm actually happy to have it. You see I was able to complete the loop. It sort of has an outer loop, and then the switches make a smaller circle inside. And last but not least, we have Trackmaster Revolution Edwards Tender without an engine. It's so flimsy, I can just throw this across the room. It's like a feather. And then, interestingly, we have the shell of Stanley here. So this is Stanley's shell, and like I mentioned before, it kind of reminds me of Shell on Wheels, although right now it's just a random shell. It's a little bit creepy, but I think it's actually kind of funny, and it will be an interesting thing to just kind of have in a box, and then someone asks about it, and I'll tell them the story of how I came across it. So with all that said, I think we've covered everything that I took a look at in this video. And before we go, I just want to talk about what I'll be doing with this stuff. So all this Trackmaster stuff, and also the wooden railway and the take-along/take-and-play, plus this Duplo track, I'll be saving and adding to my collection. And this stuff over here, the Imaginarium power rails and the other random plastic stuff, I'll probably either be donating or trying to sell, as I have really no need for it and frankly not enough space to keep it around. And hopefully that can go to someone who will have more use for it than I do. And now that I've said all that, I'll mention one more thing. I did say that I was going to try to fix some of the batteries, but that kind of failed. As you can see, the remnants of the diesel I tried to fix. And I tried to get into the take-along/take-and-play talking engines, but I just couldn't find the right batteries, and I didn't want to mess with it anymore. I couldn't even find the right size screwdriver. So I decided I'll leave that for another day, and right now just try to get this video done. So, speaking of video being done, I want to thank you for sitting through this very long video. I actually think this was the most enjoyable unboxing video I've filmed and gone through, and hopefully it will be the most interesting to watch. And of course, I've taken a look at a lot of different things. Hopefully it'll interest someone with all the different types of things I've taken a look at. And I just want to thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more unboxing videos where I'll probably move back to just strictly Thomas Wooden Railway. But who knows? Now that I've dipped my toes into this thrift store finds, maybe I'll come across some more. So, thank you for watching. I've been Wooden Railway Edward, and I will see you in the next video. I hope that you have a great day.